There's something about that creeping sense of unease, the kind that coils in your gut and sends a chill down your spine. You can't always put your finger on it, but you just know something isn't right. That's the kind of night I was having. My name's Alistair Brown, and I'm 46 years old. I'm 5 feet 11 inches and weigh about 175 pounds, managing accounts for a large manufacturing firm here in Fort Worth, Texas. My wife, Elizabeth, though she insists on going by Liz, is also 46. At 5 feet 6 inches and 130 pounds, she still turns heads. Tonight, she was stunning in a sleek black dress that hugged her figure just right. Liz works in design and graphics at a top advertising agency. We've been married for 25 years, and we've built a life together that, by most accounts, is solid. Our story goes way back. Liz and I grew up on the same block, became best friends in 4th grade, and started dating in high school. By prom, we were inseparable, sharing a night that brought us even closer. We both attended the University of Texas, and by our sophomore year, we were already sharing a 1-bedroom apartment. Looking back, I guess you could say we were living together, even then. Now, we have a 21-year-old daughter, Maria, who's currently studying at the University of Oklahoma. Yeah, she crossed state lines, traitor, but I can't be too upset. Maria recently got engaged to William Thompson, a smart, ambitious young man from Oklahoma City. William's family is in oil. His father is a major player at one of the big companies in Norman. At 26, William's a bit older than Maria, but his maturity stands out, and he's head over heels for her. We couldn't be happier for them. William's studying business law while Maria, still undecided on a major, has been enjoying her time as a cheerleader and, well, spending my money. Financially, we've done well. Liz earns around $60,000 a year at her agency, but my income as a manager in accounting has brought in over $500,000 annually. About 15 years ago, we bought a foreclosed property on Lake Arlington for $350,000 cash, fixed it up, and watched its value soar to $2.3 million. Life's been good, or at least it should feel that way. But tonight, something felt off. It started 3 days ago when Liz casually mentioned her company was hosting a party this Saturday. She filled me in on the details, then added, "Alice, I know these events aren't really your thing, and you'll probably be too tired, so don't feel like you have to come." Normally, I jump at the excuse to skip a work event, but this time, I was actually looking forward to it. "No, Liz," I told her. "I'm off for the next few days. I'd love to go." Her response surprised me. Over the following days, she kept insisting I didn't need to come. Every time, I reassured her I was excited to meet her coworkers, but her persistence was strange. Why didn't she want me there? It wasn't like her to push back so much. When the evening finally arrived, Liz looked radiant. Her tight black dress shimmered under the soft glow of the lights, her long blonde hair cascading down her back, and her bright blue eyes sparkling with excitement. Or was it something else? As soon as we entered the venue, a man in his 50s made a beeline for her. He moved quickly, his intent unmistakable. My stomach twisted, but Liz noticed him too. In a subtle but deliberate move, she extended her hand, almost as if to stop him, before turning toward me with a smile. She kissed my cheek, her gesture light but pointed. I couldn't help but feel like I just witnessed the tail end of something. We mingled and had a few drinks together, but I made sure to stay sober. I was the designated driver, but more importantly, I wanted to stay sharp. Not that I'd ever doubted Liz's loyalty. 25 years of marriage, and I'd never once suspected her of cheating. But there was something about this man that made my instincts scream. As the night went on, I overheard someone at our table mention his name, Chad Smith. That's when the unease dug deeper into my chest. Chad Smith was one of the senior advertising sales reps at Liz's company, and for reasons I couldn't quite articulate yet, I didn't like him one bit. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was seriously off, especially after the way Liz kept glancing in Chad's direction while we danced. Each time I caught her looking, Chad was already staring back at us. It was like there was some unspoken connection between them that I wasn't in on. After one of our dances, as we were catching our breath at the table, Chad approached us directly. Without so much as acknowledging my presence, he turned to Liz and asked her if she wanted to dance with him. The audacity of the man was unreal. He didn't even glance in my direction, let alone have the decency to ask for my permission. My blood boiled as I felt the heat rush to my face, my fists clenching tightly under the table. Liz must have sensed how close I was to losing it. She smiled sweetly at Chad and declined, saying, "All my dances are reserved for my husband." There was a flash of anger in Chad's eyes, but he masked it quickly, turning away and heading toward the dance floor with another woman in tow. It should have made me feel better, but it didn't. Something wasn't right. A little while later, Liz asked me to grab her another drink, so I made my way to the bar. As I returned with her drink in hand, I saw Chad standing in front of Liz, talking to her. My steps slowed as I watched from a distance, hidden in the crowd. There was something about the look on Liz's face, those sad, almost pleading eyes, that stopped me cold. And then I saw her lips move. I've always been good at reading lips. It's a skill I picked up over the years. There was no mistaking what she said. "Sorry, baby." Those two words sent a chill down my spine. I stood there frozen, trying to make sense of it. Who was she calling baby? For the rest of the night, I stayed stone-cold sober, every sense heightened. I began to notice how people around us seemed to be watching. Watching me, watching Liz, and definitely watching Chad. There was a tension in the air, like I was the last person in the room to figure out what was really going on. By the time we left the party, my mind was racing. I've never been one to keep things bottled up, so as soon as we got in the car, I couldn't hold it in any longer. "What's going on with Chad?" I asked, keeping my voice as steady as I could, though the hurt and suspicion were boiling inside me. "Liz, who the hell is Chad? The two of you seem to have some sort of connection. Are you cheating on me?" Liz looked taken aback, her face a mix of shock and indignation. "Honey," she sighed, "Chad is just someone I work with. I can't believe you'd even think that. I love you more than anything." Her voice was steady, but there was something off about her tone, like she was trying too hard to sound convincing. I didn't push it further that night. I let the silence hang between us, but my mind was far from quiet. Liz knows me well enough to understand one thing. If I ever found out she was cheating, there would be hell to pay. She's seen firsthand what I'm capable of when I've been wronged. Back in high school, when a punk used to bully me, I waited until school let out, cornered him, and beat him senseless. Then I stripped him of his pants and left him there, humiliated. Liz had my back then, swearing to the teachers that I couldn't have done it because I'd been with her the whole time. She knows I'm not the type to roll over and take it. But that night, as I drove home, I couldn't shake the image of her sad, pleading eyes or the words she mouthed to Chad. "Sorry, baby." Maybe I was overthinking it. Or maybe there was more to the story than she was letting on. Either way, I wasn't about to sit in the dark. Liz should have known better. If Chad Smith thought he could mess with my marriage, he had another thing coming. The next day, I made up my mind. I wasn't going to lose sleep over this. I hired a private investigator, a discreet, efficient guy I'd used before in my line of work. Within weeks, he delivered exactly what I needed. A stack of evidence that left no room for doubt. Photos, videos, audio recordings. It was all there, cold and damning. Fast forward to a quiet morning a few weeks later. Liz and I were sitting at the dining table, sipping coffee like we'd done for years. It was time to confront her. "Liz," I said, keeping my tone calm but firm, "you'd never cheat on me, right? Never have, right?" Her eyes shot up, surprise flashing across her face. "No, honey, of course not. Why would you even ask that, Alistair?" Without saying a word, I reached into my briefcase and pulled out a large manila envelope. One by one, I began laying the photos down on the table, letting them do the talking. The first photo showed her kissing Chad outside a Motel 6. The next one captured her walking into a room with him. Then came the gut punches. Chad's car parked right outside our home, Liz straddling Chad in my favorite recliner, and finally, the two of them together in our bed. Liz's face went pale. Her hands trembled as she reached for one of the photos. "Alistair, it doesn't mean anything," she stammered. "I don't love him. It's just sex." I leaned in, my voice cold as ice. "It means everything to me, Liz." Her desperation was palpable now. "He's not better than you, Alistair," she blurted out. "He's not even as big. And as far as better, it's not about that. It's just different. That's all." "How long?" I demanded, my voice rising. We've been doing it for over a year, she admitted, tears welling up in her eyes. A year? I snapped. You've had a boyfriend for over a year? She shook her head, looking almost offended. At work, we don't call it that. I'm his office wife. A lot of people at work do it, Alistair. It's just part of the culture. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My jaw tightened. My fists clenched on the table. You're not going to leave me, are you, Alice? She asked, her voice barely a whisper. I leaned back, shaking my head slowly. Hell no, I said. I'm not leaving. You are. Before she could respond, I dropped the final bombshell. I've already packed your clothes and personal stuff in your BMW. I want you out of my house now. I grabbed Liz by the arm and practically dragged her to her car. Her eyes were red and swollen, tears streaming down her face. She looked like a broken doll, but I felt no pity. She had done this to herself. Where will I go, Alice? She sobbed, her voice cracking with desperation. I don't care where you go, I replied coldly. Go live with your office husband. A look of sheer panic crossed her face. I can't go to him, she whispered, almost inaudibly. Chad is married, with 3 kids. I already knew that, thanks to the private investigator's thorough report. I even knew the names of his wife and kids, their ages, and where they lived. But I wasn't about to let Liz know how much I knew. Let her figure it out on her own. Liz, I said, my voice low and hard. I don't care where you end up. Head back to Motel 6 if that's what you want, but get the hell away from here. And stay away. Her sobbing became uncontrollable as she tried to plead with me. Alistair, are you seriously going to throw away 25 years of a good marriage? I stared her down, my face cold and emotionless. No, Liz. It was less than 24 years of a good marriage and over a year of a cheating marriage. You're the one who threw it away. Without another word, she got into her BMW, her tears still streaming. The engine roared to life, and she sped off into the night, leaving me standing in the driveway. For a moment, the thought of how empty the house would feel without her crossed my mind, but my anger quickly swallowed that feeling whole. She had betrayed me, and I wasn't about to let her emotional theatrics change that. A few hours later, just as I was starting to calm down, the phone rang. It was Maria. I took a deep breath before answering, trying to steady myself. Hello, Maria. How's everything going with the wedding plans? I asked, forcing cheerfulness into my voice. I was genuinely happy for her, despite my own life unraveling. I was footing the bill for the big wedding she had always dreamed of, and she and William were handling most of the planning. It was the least I could do for my only daughter. I loved her with all my heart and wanted her to have the happiest day of her life. But instead of the excited chatter I was expecting, there was a long, uncomfortable pause on the other end. My stomach twisted. Something was wrong. Dad, Maria finally said, her voice hesitant. I just got off the phone with Mom. She's crying and saying you threw her out of the house. What the hell is going on? I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. The last thing I wanted was to drag Maria into this mess, but there was no way to avoid it now. She deserved the truth. Maria, listen to me. I began slowly, trying to keep my voice steady. Your mother, she's been unfaithful. For over a year, she's been having an affair with a man from her work. Dad, grow up, Maria snapped, her tone filled with irritation. It's the 21st century. That kind of thing happens all the time. It's not a big deal if a woman goes out and gets some action on the side. Men used to do it all the time. I've never done it, I shot back, my voice tight with anger. And I sure as hell won't put up with it. So what? Are you going to lecture me now about loyalty? Are you doing the same thing to William, Maria? I demanded, my frustration spilling over. That's none of your business, Dad, she replied sharply. Besides, William and I aren't even married yet, so whatever I do is my concern, not his. I was stunned, left speechless by my own daughter's callous response. Who else in our family is doing this crap? I finally asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Aunt Nancy does, Dad. So what? She said dismissively. My chest tightened. My own family, a pack of cheaters. It was like the world I thought I knew was crumbling beneath my feet. I muttered under my breath, feeling sick to my stomach. "Dad, you need to get over it and let Mom come back home," Maria insisted over the phone. "Besides, it's not that big of a deal. Oh, and by the way, I've met Chad. He's a great guy. Mom wants him involved in the wedding, and so do I." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Are you serious? Have you all lost your minds?" My voice was shaking with rage. "Well, if you want Chad at your wedding, let him walk you down the aisle, because if he's there, I sure as hell won't be." Without waiting for a response, I hung up the phone. It rang multiple times that night, but I ignored it. I was done. 2 days later, Liz showed up at the house, clutching a piece of paper in her hand, a court order. It seemed her so-called office husband had a top-notch lawyer, and she'd managed to secure a temporary order granting her the right to return home until everything was settled. The audacity. She had the nerve to walk into the house and try to justify her actions, as if her betrayal wasn't enough. "Alistair, it wasn't affecting our marriage," she claimed, her tone infuriatingly calm. "I've always been affectionate with you when you asked for it, and I can continue to be that way. But I don't see any reason to stop seeing Chad." Her sheer arrogance left me speechless. She truly believed that her affair hadn't impacted our marriage, that she could carry on as if nothing had happened and expect me to accept her and Chad as part of my life. I didn't know whether to laugh or scream. "You know damn well, Liz, I'm never going to put up with a cheating wife," I spat, barely containing my rage. "And as for your so-called affection, don't bother. I'll never touch you again. You can keep the master bedroom. It's already tainted, seeing as that's where you screwed him. I've been sleeping in one of the guest rooms ever since I found out what kind of woman you really are." "Alistair, I am not a 304, she protested, her voice shaking. "I don't care what you want to call yourself, Liz," I snapped. "It doesn't change a damn thing. I'll be filing for divorce this week to put an end to all of this." But Liz wasn't backing down. "Alistair, I don't want a divorce," she said, her tone suddenly shifting. "And you should know, Chad and I have already consulted with his lawyer. If you go through with it, I'll get the house and half of all our assets. You make more than I do, so I'll be entitled to a big chunk of your paycheck in alimony. So, my dear husband," her lips curled into a cold smile, "you might as well sit back and accept it. Like Chad says, just roll with it. Go to hell. Both you and Chad," I growled, storming off to my room and slamming the door behind me. Hours later, around midnight, there was a soft knock on my door. Liz stood there, tears streaming down her face. "Alistair, please," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I'm sorry. I want us to work this out, but I also want Chad." Her words hit me like a slap to the face. I couldn't decide whether to laugh or cry at the absurdity of it all. The following morning, I went to consult one of the lawyers at my company. His assessment was grim and aligned with what Liz had taunted me about. "She'll get the house, half of everything. And since Maria is out of the house, there's no child support," he explained. "On top of that, you'll be on the hook for about $125,000 a year in alimony." "Alistair," he said with a heavy sigh, "there's no easy way around it. If you go through with this divorce, you're screwed." The next few days were tense but quiet. Liz and I avoided each other, not exchanging a single word. But on the third day, she broke the silence. "So, are you still foolish enough to pursue this divorce?" she asked, her voice dripping with contempt. "My lawyer is still reviewing everything," I replied flatly. "Screw you, Alistair," she hissed. "I'll take everything you have." I didn't bother responding, taking a long drink from my beer and ignoring her. About an hour later, I noticed Liz talking on the phone in the dining room. She walked over and handed me the receiver, her expression triumphant. "Someone wants to talk to you, Alistair," she said, a smirk playing on her lips. I hesitated before answering. "Hello?" "Alistair, this is Chad," came the voice on the other end. His tone was smug, almost taunting. "Listen, man, I get that you're pissed, but you need to just accept this and roll with it, cucky boy. Otherwise, we'll take everything you have and make your life a living hell. You have no idea." I slammed the phone down, anger surging through my veins like wildfire. The audacity of Chad to call me and try to rub salt in the wound was beyond belief. You don't know who you're messing with, I muttered under my breath. Liz was no longer my concern. She had chosen this path, and as far as I was concerned, she was damaged goods. Chad could have her, and they both deserved whatever mess they created together. Over the next week, Liz continued meeting with her so-called office husband, always at a Motel 6. She didn't dare bring him back to the house again after my warning. I had made it crystal clear that if I ever caught Chad in my home again, it wouldn't end well for either of them. I think she finally believed me. Meanwhile, work was a whirlwind of change. The company I worked for had been acquired by a larger firm based in Colorado, and they were in the process of restructuring. As one of 2 account managers left in the plant, I knew my position was precarious. The other manager, Alex, was sharp, a younger guy who'd come in from the acquiring company. Despite the circumstances, I genuinely liked Alex. He was smart, easy to get along with, and, as I later learned, had been through a bitter divorce himself. He understood my situation better than most. The corporate higher-ups were clearly angling for Alex to take over my role, but as a unionized employee, I had some protection. To incentivize me to leave, they'd been offering buyout packages. Their latest offer, $500,000 in cash, plus the option to convert my retirement funds into company stock. It was tempting, but I hadn't made up my mind until a conversation with Alex at a strip club one night sealed the deal. Alex frequented the place, having found solace there after his own divorce left him with an empty house and too much free time. Over beers, we talked about work, life, and the wreckage of bad relationships. Alistair, Alex said, his voice heavy with experience. If I could go back, I'd sell everything off or give it away before the divorce papers even hit the table. I lost so much because I wasn't prepared. His words hit me like a lightning bolt. Alex was right. I didn't need to sit around waiting for Liz and her lawyer to strip me of everything I'd worked for. I finished my beer, shook Alex's hand, and thanked him for the insight before heading home, a plan already forming in my mind. When I got home, Liz was nowhere to be found. She didn't come home at all that night, and for the first time, I realized how little I cared. Once, I'd loved Liz more than anything in the world. Now, all I felt was hatred and a burning desire to free myself from her entirely. That night, I finalized my plan. The next day, Maria called me. I took a deep breath before answering, knowing the conversation wasn't going to end well. "Dad, are you getting past your anger?" she began, her tone hesitant but still filled with the same entitlement I'd come to expect. "What do you want, Maria?" I asked flatly. "I'm calling because Mom wants me to talk to you about the wedding," she said. "She and I think Chad should be part of it too. Maybe he could walk up the aisle behind you and me, then sit down when we get to Mom." The audacity of her words left me stunned. "Maria, is that really what you want?" I asked, my voice tight with disbelief. "Yes, Daddy," she said confidently. "I think it's what's best, and I know Mom feels the same way. You're my father and Mom's husband, but Chad's her office husband, so we both think he should be there." I took a deep breath, my anger barely contained. "Maria, I have a better idea," I said, my voice icy. "Let your office dad walk you down the aisle, because I won't be there. I'll call William and apologize for missing the wedding." "Dad, don't be silly," Maria scoffed. "William doesn't like this either, but he'll get over it by our wedding night." "Maria, I wish you and William a good life," I said quietly. "Goodbye." "What does that mean, Dad?" she asked, but I hung up before she could say anything else. I sat there for a moment, tears welling in my eyes, but the anger quickly drowned out the pain. When Liz came home later that night, she had the nerve to ask, "Did you miss me, honey?" I looked her dead in the eyes and said coldly, "I will never miss you. Go somewhere and die." Liz ran off to her room, crying. I didn't care. The next morning, I arrived at corporate headquarters at 8 a.m. sharp and accepted their buyout offer. $500,000 was transferred into an offshore account, along with 1 year's salary. With the house and cars already paid off, I had all the leverage I needed. My next stop was the bank, where I arranged to borrow against the house and Liz's BMW. The house, valued at $2.3 million, easily secured a $2 million loan, and I borrowed $40,000 against her car, which was worth $45,000. The goal was simple: saddle her with debt while securing my freedom. The tricky part was getting Liz to sign the paperwork, but I was confident I could handle it. Afterward, I called the wedding planner to cancel my credit cards, ensuring they wouldn't cover any more wedding expenses. When she asked who would be paying, I replied, "Tell Maria to ask her new dad, Chad, for the money." With every move, I was putting distance between myself and the wreckage Liz had created. She wanted to play games? Fine. I'd make sure she regretted it. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The phone call from Chad had been the final straw. The arrogance, the entitlement, the complete lack of remorse. I knew I couldn't just let it slide. This wasn't just about Liz cheating or Chad's smug taunts. It was about taking back control of my life, ensuring that I didn't become a victim in the story Liz and Chad were writing for me. I wasn't going to sit around and let them make a fool of me. I was going to end this, on my terms. Later that evening, I called Liz and suggested dinner. She sounded thrilled, like a woman who thought the storm was finally clearing. "That sounds great, Alistair," she said cheerfully. "I'm so happy you're starting to get past all this. Where do you want to go?" "The Italian place downtown, under the lights. Is that okay?" "That sounds so romantic, darling. Maybe you'll get lucky tonight," she teased. "I hope to get luckier than you think," I replied, my tone calm but layered with something she didn't pick up on. We had dinner, and Liz, as always, charmed everyone with her smile and laughter. She downed 6 glasses of wine, leaning into me with an affection I knew was completely fake. At one point, she even tried to kiss me, but I gently deflected her, promising, later. Over the meal, I brought up an idea I had been thinking about, $1 million life insurance policy. I told her it was a suggestion from my company to protect her financially in case something ever happened to me. Her eyes lit up at the mention of $1 million. "Liz, isn't your sister Nancy a notary?" "Yes, she is," she said. "Perfect. We need to sign these in front of a notary. Let's stop by her place tonight, get it done, and then we can celebrate properly." Liz, drunk and giddy, eagerly agreed. After dinner, we drove to Nancy's house, and Liz signed the papers without a second thought. She was too busy imagining the financial windfall she'd receive to bother reading what she was signing. As we left Nancy's, Liz leaned into me, her voice slurred but warm. "I'm so glad we're back to normal, Alistair. I missed this." I smiled but didn't reply. My plan was in motion. The next morning, I rushed the signed papers to the bank and the mortgage company. The $440,000 car loan was approved almost immediately, and the $2 million home equity loan was on track to be finalized within a week. I made sure everything would funnel into my offshore accounts. That afternoon, I called the wedding planner and canceled all my credit cards, ensuring that none of them could be used to cover the wedding expenses. When the planner asked, "Who will be paying for the wedding now?" I replied with a smirk, "Tell Maria to ask her new dad, Chad." The fallout was glorious. 1 week later, I cashed out my retirement funds, took the buyout money from my job, and traded in my old truck for a brand new Ford F-350. I also purchased a 36-foot fifth-wheel RV, paying cash for both. The truck and RV were registered under my cousin's name, and I obtained 3 new credit cards, all under his identity. My escape was seamless. Meanwhile, Liz's life began to unravel. She discovered the loans in her name only after the payments became unmanageable. Her once comfortable life in our luxurious home quickly spiraled into foreclosure. She lost the house, the BMW, and her job. Broken with nowhere else to go, Liz ended up working as a waitress at a Denny's along the interstate, barely scraping by. Chad didn't fare much better. His wife divorced him, taking the house, 60% of their assets, and $6,000 a year in alimony. Chad also lost his job after his ex-wife, a major shareholder in the advertising agency, ensured his career was destroyed. The last I heard, he was working as a tape rewinder and DVD cleaner at one of the last remaining Blockbuster stores, living in a dingy one-room apartment above a local adult shop. As for Maria, her world came crashing down when William confronted her with the audio recordings. She tried to downplay it as just casual fun, but William wasn't buying it. He called off the wedding, cutting all ties with her. Maria lost not only William but also the financial support of his wealthy family and mine. Now, She lives with Liz in a shabby two-bedroom apartment in a rough part of town. From what I hear, they've taken to entertaining a steady stream of visitors who leave $20 bills on the counter. What they've become is anyone's guess. And me? I'm living my best life in sunny southern Florida. The beaches, the weather, the carefree lifestyle. It's everything I could have asked for. I've got a fantastic job working for one of the big 5 companies, a brand new truck, a spacious RV, and the freedom to do whatever I please. Every now and then, I think about Liz and Chad and can't help but smile. They thought they could play me, but in the end, I walked away with everything. So here's my question to you, dear listeners. Was I justified in what I did? Did Liz and Chad get what they deserved, or do you think I went too far? And what about Maria? Was I wrong to cut her off, or was she just as guilty for enabling her mother? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Let's discuss.